So we have MongoDB server installed on our local development machine, and we are also able to connect to that MongoDB server using Mongo Shell. So here, let me first go ahead and let me stop this Mongo Shell process by pressing Ctrl C. Let me clear the terminal and let me increase the font size a little bit here. And let's go ahead and let's run this mongosh command again in order to start Mongo Shell and connect to the local installation of MongoDB server. When I press enter, here you will see that now we are connected to the local installation of MongoDB server. And the local MongoDB server, it is running on localhost port number 27017. You will also notice that when we are connected to the MongoDB server, here currently we are in this test database. Now, before we go ahead and before we talk about databases and before we learn how we can create a database, what I want is first I want to show you the list of all the available databases. And for that, we can run a command show dbs. If I press enter, it will list all the available databases, all the databases which is currently present in the MongoDB server. So these are the three databases which is currently present in the MongoDB server. And these three are the default database. Basically, these are the system databases which comes when you install MongoDB server for the first time. Now, we are not going to work with any one of these three databases. Instead, we want to create a new database and we are going to work with that database. Now, you might also ask, if this test is a database, then why it is not listed in this database list? That's because you need to understand that when you first connect to the MongoDB server, there you only have these three system databases. And what MongoDB does is it provides you a test database in order to work with it. But this test database, it is not present in the disk. This test database, it is present in the memory. And once you add a collection, and in that collection, when you add a document, then that database is actually created and it is added to the disk. So currently, this test database is present in memory. It is not present in disk. And that's why it is not listed in this database list. But in this test database, if I go ahead and if I add a collection, so for that, what we can do is we can say db.createCollection. So this create collection is a method using which we can create a collection in the database. And here we have to specify a collection name. Let me call it as test collection or test call. Okay. So here this DB, it is pointing to the current database, and the current database is this test database. Currently we are inside this test database. So this DB will point to the current database, the database in which we are currently in. So currently this DB is pointing to this test database, and in that test database we are trying to create a collection, and we are providing a name for that collection, which is test call. So let me go ahead and let me execute this command, and you will see that we have received this object which says OK is 1. That means this test call is created. And now if I run show db's command, now you will see that this test database is also listed, because now in this test database we have a collection. So we have created a collection inside that test database. That means this test database is actually created and it is added in the disk. So now it is not present just in the memory, it is added to the disk. And now we can go ahead and we can work with this test database. So using this show db's command, you can list all the databases which you have in your MongoDB server. And this db, this is an object which points to the currently selected database. Now, if you want to switch between database, you can use command. So here you can say use and the database name. So for example, let's say I want to switch to local database. I'll say use local. And if I press enter, now we have switched to local database. And in this case, the db object will point to this local database. So if I simply run this db command, And if I press enter, you will see that it has returned us the name of the database to which this DB object is pointing to. So remember that this DB is an object which points to a database in the MongoDB server. And this object has some methods and properties which we can use in order to work with MongoDB database. For example, this DB object has this createCollection method using which we can create a collection inside a database. All right. Now, if I try to use this use command and if I specify a database name, for example, demo, in that case, what will happen? Because we don't have any demo database present in the MongoDB server. If you see, currently we have these four databases. We do not have any demo database. So if I use this use command in order to switch to this demo database, what will happen? So let's see what will happen. If I press enter, you will see that it says we have switched to demo database. But this demo database was not present in the MongoDB server because we can see that it is not listed here when we run this show dbs command. So here what has happened is when we use this use command and after that when we specify the database name, if that database is present in the MongoDB server, we will switch to that database and the DB object will point to that database. But if that database is not present in the MongoDB server, in that case, that database will be created in memory, just like how this test database was created. So here, this demo database is created in memory. And now this DB object points to that demo database, which is present in the memory. This demo database, it is currently not present on the disk. And that's why if I run db command and if I press enter, you will see that it has returned us the database name to which it is pointing to. So currently this db object is pointing to this demo database. But if I go ahead and if I run show db's command, it will list all the databases which is present on disk, which is actually present in the MongoDB server. So you will see that we have admin database, we have config database, we have local database, and we have test database present in the MongoDB server. But demo database is not listed here because demo database has been created in memory. It is not created in the MongoDB server yet. If we want to actually create this demo database on the server, then as I mentioned before, in this demo database, we will have to add at least one collection. So again, if I run this db.createCollection command, and there let me create a collection. Let's call this collection as user or users. And if I go ahead and if I run this command, so again, currently this db object is pointing to this demo database. And on that db object, we are calling this createCollection method in order to create a new collection. So if I go ahead and if I press enter, now this users collection has been created. And now if I go ahead and if I run show db's command, now it should also list that demo database. So in this way, we can create a database. So when you use this use command, and after that, when you specify a database name, if that database is already present in the MongoDB server, then we will switch to that database and the DB object will point to that database. But if that database is not present in the MongoDB server, then this use command is going to create a new database with that name in memory, and this DB object will point to that new database which is present in memory. But that database will be created in the MongoDB server. It will be created on the disk only if we add at least one collection in that database. This is very important to understand. Now, what is a database? In simple words, a database is an organized collection of data. It is basically a storage in MongoDB server which stores all the related collections and data. For example, let's say you're creating an e-commerce website. Now for the e-commerce website, you have to manage products, you have to manage orders, you have to manage customers, etc. So where are you going to save these data? For that, you create a database and you store all the related data in that database. Here, customers, products, orders, all these data are related to your e-commerce website. So all these data will be stored inside a single database in different collections. And that's why we say that a database is an organized collection of related data. Also, MongoDB is a NoSQL database. That means it stores data in a flexible JSON-like format called BSON. And unlike traditional relational databases like MS SQL, MySQL, or Oracle, MongoDB uses collections and documents instead of tables and rows. And we have already learned this theoretically in the very first lecture of this section. So we have learned how we can list all the databases, how we can switch between databases, and how we can create a database. In order to create a database, we can use this use command followed by the database name. Now let me also show you how we can delete a database from the MongoDB server. For that, first you need to switch to the database which you want to delete. So currently I am in this demo database. Let's say I want to delete this test database from the MongoDB server. For that, first we will have to switch to that test database. So here I'll say use and then the database name is test. If I press enter, now we have switched to test database. Let me go ahead and let me clear the terminal first. So as you can see, currently we are in the test database. And if I type db command here and if I press enter, you will notice that this db object, it is pointing to this test database. So on that db object, we have another method which is drop database. And if we call this drop database method, also here, this D should be in uppercase. Okay, so if we call this drop database method on this db object is pointing to this test database. So what this method will do is it will delete that database from the MongoDB server. Let's see that. Let's go ahead and let's run this command. So you will see that here we have received an acknowledgement. So it says OK is 1. That means this command executed successfully and it dropped the test database. And now if I go ahead and if I run show db's command, you will not see test database anymore in this database list. But you can ask, if the test database is deleted from the MongoDB server, then why we are still in the test database? Here, if I run db command, you will see that this db object is still pointing to the test database. And the reason for that is this test database has been deleted from the MongoDB server, but it is still present in the memory. Okay, and once we switch away from this database, for example, if I use demo command, now we are switching to demo database. So once I have switched to demo database, this test database will also be removed from the memory. And here I can run show db's command. So you can see currently we have these 4 databases. All right, let me clear the terminal. So you need to remember that in order to create a database, you use command followed by the database name. For example, let's say I want to create a sample database. And when I press enter, this sample database is not present in the MongoDB server. So in that case, this use command is going to create this sample database in memory. Here, this sample database will be created in memory and this db object will point to that sample database. Now, if we want to add this database to MongoDB server, in that case, we will have to create at least one collection in this sample database. Then it will be added to the MongoDB server. Here are some important database commands which you need to remember.